Okay, right. Hi everyone. So my name's David Perilli. I'm one of the co-organisers of the Dorking Film Festival, and we're here with our Filmmakers panel. So we're going to ask a couple of questions and then see if we have any questions from the audience. So panellists, could you introduce yourself and just your name and which film you're going to start with?
So I'm Julia, and my film is Drip, Drip, Drip. My elevator pitch for it is it's about depression and there's a mermaid.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Nice.
Okay.
I'm Júlia Kendra.
Uh-huh.
Hi. I'm in the film This Grey.
Thank you.
I'm Tortor, and I made the film Hot Mess, which is semi-autobiographical and about my experience coming to terms with having ADHD.
Okay, thank you. So Julia, to give us the elevator pitch, can we have a bit more detail? How did the film come together?
Well, I'm predominantly an actor, and I wanted to put together a film, and I've always heard from people that one of the most difficult things is getting good sound. So I almost wanted to make like a kind of a silent film. There is a little bit of dialogue, but I think that was one of the starting points, and then I just decided to go very imagery based. So yeah, and also mermaids are just cool. So
Okay, so you're a fan of fishy based.
Yeah.
Right.
yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then in terms of being an actress and
Mhm.
directing your own film, were you always going to be in it? Could you have a vision of you not being in it?
I mean, I wrote it for me, so yeah, I was always going to be there. I like to be an actress as well, so
Okay,
yeah.
great. Julia, so we've got a link there because you're basically the star of the film you're in.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how did you get involved?
It was actually through a mutual friend who's also in the film. He knew the director, and then the director just sort of reached out to me and was like, hey, would you like a coffee, and we'll talk about sort of the idea for the film. And it just so worked out that I had like such a personal connection to her idea, and so she got me on board.
Okay, so can you describe the film again?
Yeah. It's shot on Super 8.
Yeah.
It's a movie about this Spanish tourist that falls in love with London and just has this fascination with London. And I'm not from London, and I'm also Spanish, so it just kind of worked out really well.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I've got to ask, what don't you like about London?
Oh, it just at the time, I think I was going through something where I just was experiencing like it was very rainy all the time, and it's very expensive and very rushed, and I just had this like aversion to it for a minute there, but the movie kind of brought me back into it.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So Tortor, will you tell us about your project?
So my project I actually made at the Aardman Academy,
Mm-hmm.
which is in Bristol. They make Wallace and Gromit, everything like that. And due to me having ADHD, I find it hard to stay committed to a project, but being at Aardman gave me the accountability to finish a film, because I don't think I would have otherwise. Yeah.
Okay, and I don't know if it's clear, but it's a stop motion animation, isn't it?
Yeah, it's an animation. So everything I made, the puppets, the sets, all the little props, and my film had a lot of props. So yeah, it was quite full on. We had 6 months, and yeah, I needed a break afterwards because yeah, it's really tough when you're doing everything yourself.
Okay, so back to Julia. What was the hardest thing putting it together?
The post-production. I had no idea how difficult post-production was, because usually I'm just an actor, so all the work I do is just being there, but I didn't realise like how much work, you know, the sound design, getting the edit right, just like getting everything.
Okay, can I ask, was this your first film as a director?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was. So it was tricky. I'd say post-production was tricky, but yeah, definitely finding the right people to help was, I think, the important thing.
Okay, and you have made more afterwards, is that right?
I've done more theatre stuff, so I've written theatre stuff, but this is kind of the only film that I've made and put together so far.
Okay, and did you have any problems with the budget or anything like that?
No, I kept it quite low budget, and I think because I tried to do the post-production on my own, and then I kind of later on ended up hiring people to help with certain things, because there was that space of time, I'd had some extra money by then.
Okay, great, thank you. So Julia, when you were filming the film you're in, was it it's all at night, isn't it, if I remember? Or?
Half of it was during the day, half of it was at night, yeah.
Okay, and were there any particular issues you encountered filming it sort of in in central London essentially?
Yeah, I mean, because it's shot on Super 8, we had one roll, and it was supposed to be unedited, so we would do like one take for each scene. So that came with its own set of problems, and then being in London, obviously everyone's just like...
Okay, so just to rewind, because it's Super
Yeah.
8, the cost of the film is a big issue for making a film.
Yeah, partially, but it was also originally made for the Straight 8 competition.
So the Straight 8 being as in you were editing in camera. essentially.
Exactly, yeah, exactly.
So as an actress, how did you cope with that pressure?
Oh god. Well, I just had to keep rehearsing with the director before every take in the middle of London. Just
Okay,
do you like it this
how
way?
controlled were those scenes you were in? Were there members of the public walking around
Yeah.
you?
Yeah,
So how did you manage that, or how did the crew manage that as well?
luck. It was purely luck, and then also just honestly, like one of our crew members would sometimes just like shoo off people, or we'd try and go to like a corner where there were less people. But because our takes were so short, I think each take was like 3 or 4 seconds, max like 10 seconds.
Yeah.
I think it was kind of easier. That made it a bit easier.
Okay, and just one more. How much rehearsal did you do beforehand?
We would do about like 2 or 3 like rehearsals. Just keep doing the same thing, the same motion or whatever she wanted, the director, until she was like, yeah, I like how you did it this time. Let's do that.
Okay, so you weren't just being put in front of the camera.
No.
Okay, great. So Tortor,
Yep.
Compared to that experience, you had months.
Yes. Yeah. So like with animation, everything's planned quite meticulously, because if you go wrong, you've got to start again, and everything does take a long time. And we were advised by Aardman to do 2 seconds of animation a day, which is quite slow for me because I'm quite an intuitive animator. I prefer to just launch straight into it and just go for it. Whereas they want you to plan everything. So
Okay. So what was your per day?
Oh, I average 8 seconds per day.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And how do you cope with a project like this? You might view it as a cruise liner or an oil tanker drifting.
Yeah.
How do you cope? How do you make changes once you've built up momentum when you're sort of going through the project?
Well, I think it's really important to listen to the people around you.
Yeah.
I was in a setting where there were lots of people giving me lots of feedback and notes, and so you don't have to agree with what they say, but I always listen and see if I agree and take stuff on board. So it was constantly evolving. Where the film started and where it ended, it's a completely different film, but the important thing is you keep like the golden nugget of your idea throughout. So it was about ADHD and my experience with that, and that stayed constant throughout, but the setting changed and the way the story was told changed.
Okay, so you were able to make changes as you went.
Yeah, it was constantly developing, but obviously once I've made the puppets, the characters have to stay as those characters, but what they're doing can change.
Okay.
Yeah.
And have you still got the puppets?
I do, yeah.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. Let's throw it open. Do you have any questions in the audience?
Did you make your own puppets?
Yes.
How long did that take? Did you enjoy that process?
It was quite challenging. It took longer than it should have. We had some complications. Using silicone is very difficult, something which I hadn't anticipated, and so just making the hands, I spent a whole week making like 6 pairs of hands in case things like fingers break, and they were all like useless for various reasons. So like you have an armature inside, which is like the skeleton, and then the silicone is over that, and if the fingertips aren't quite up to the end, like you can't have full movement. And yeah, so I was learning as I went. I probably had the most comprehensive learning in silicone casting, so I could do it very well now, but yeah, it was quite tedious making the puppets in particular, because you're having to get them to move how you want. So you have, like for example, in my film, the character needed to lie down. You have to put in rigging points so that they can be raised up in the air, and I put one in their bottom. When I wanted it to lie down, it didn't work because it was at the wrong angle to screw through the floor. So I had to just put a bit of wire around its waist, twist it underneath through a hole, and then hold it down that way. So it's constantly problem solving. Yeah.
Okay.
Julia, how did you chop yourself up between being in front of the camera and being behind the camera? How much time did you spend in front or behind? How did you decide what was best to do?
I, as you guys will see in a bit, I very much Tommy Wiseau'd this film in that I wrote it, directed it, acted in it, everything. I'd say I just like did good plan for the day, and then I would, talk to the cinematographer, and I'd kind of be checking the shots afterwards to make sure I was happy with it. I'd say it probably took a bit longer because obviously if you're directing it and also acting in it, you have to kind of check if you're happy with the shots. So yeah, it just took a bit longer. I'd say next time I would probably get a director because it just made it a bit more difficult.
Okay. We've got a question there.
I've heard, I think I know a little bit about what you might say, but is there one thing in particular that you would do differently on your project? And I'll suggest that everyone, so you can go through the three.
Yeah, I think next time I will probably get a separate director. But I think one of the good things about having done a film now is at least I know a few people who I know are good at what they do, where with it being the first time I had to kind of find a good sound designer, and that was tricky. I had to find a good colour grader and all these other bits, but now at least I feel like I know a few people that could help next time.
That's great. Well, for me, because I'm obviously not as involved with the production, I think I've just found out that I really like Super 8. I think it's like very underrated. It's such a nice little piece of art form, so I just want to work more with Super 8.
With me, obviously I was making it in a time constraint environment and I did feel quite rushed, so I think if I was doing that again, a simpler idea, and if I'm doing it on my own, just not feeling guilty about taking a little bit longer just to make sure it's completely how I wanted. So yeah, just not rushing yourself, and the film will take as long as it takes to get it right.
Okay. The chat behind.
I haven't seen your films. Are they coming up now?
Yeah,
sorry,
they
we're
are,
doing this
they
in
are.
a back-to-front manner so that we could get it between the two short film sessions. So you'll see it shortly.
I was just wondering, how much time do you sort of spend on the central message of what you're trying to say? I mean, we talk a lot about all the technical aspects of making a film, but how much do you try and focus in on that message, or do you just let it say its own message when you finish it? Or
I'd say I think my one's a bit like you can kind of read it the way you do because it hasn't got much dialogue, so it's kind of like it's up for interpretation of what you think it's about. And I think that can be quite a nice thing in filmmaking, in that I think a lot of films work well if there's like a little bit of ambiguity there.
That's good. What about you guys?
I've got a similar answer, to just not keep things too tight and just allow it to sort of evolve and
Speak for itself.
yeah, and just be open to other people's opinions as well. That's what I did, and I feel like the film was better because of that. Because when you have a very clear, tight vision and you're like, no, this is how it has to be, it does sort of become quite stiff. And I think it's better to just let it evolve. And
So when you look back at it now, does it speak to you does it say something to you that you didn't know you might be saying originally?
yes, it does actually, yeah. So again, there's multiple layers of ways it could be interpreted.
Yeah.
And when you see it, you'll hopefully get that as well. But yeah.
Okay, Julia, do you want to comment?
I agree.
Okay.
That's all.
Okay, a question about that?
Oh, hello. How do you finance your films? Are you self-funded or do you get help from any organisations?
Yeah, self-funded.
Do you know how the film is funded?
I don't actually know. I
Okay.
never asked. Yeah.
Fair enough.
It's self-funded. I also got some help from family, and I did extra work as well, just because I had to pay to do it at Aardman, which is where I made it, and it was quite expensive. Altogether it probably cost about 25 grand. Yeah, but I think it was worth it because, like I said, I needed that outside structure to keep me accountable to make the film, and I'm really pleased with it. So, yeah.
Okay, right. I've got one more.
Julia, you
Yes.
mentioned sound.
Yes.
As the organisers of the festival, we find probably a quarter of the submissions, you start watching them, the sound is awful. They can't be shown.
Yeah.
And I think sound is absolutely crucial
Definitely.
How do you overcome problems with sound? How do you get the right levels?
I think our one was difficult because the little bit of dialogue we do have is mostly at a beach. So that is difficult. I had a really good sound design guy, and he kind of worked with the problems. So he was kind of purposefully putting sort of almost like a wave kind of sound in the background and kind of making it sound a bit dreamlike. So he was really good because it didn't sound that great from the original recording. So I guess fix it in post, that's the answer. Or, have a really good sound recording person.
Sorry.
No, you go on.
I'm actually super passionate about the same thing with like audio. I think it really makes a good film. I think a lot of people put so much emphasis on like it needs to look really great, but if it doesn't sound good, I feel like that immediately takes you out of it.
Okay, but with the film you're in, you had the advantage of doing the audio afterwards.
Yeah,
Okay.
voiceover, exactly.
Tortor?
Yeah, so with animation, it's a different game completely. Nothing is caught in camera, it's all post-production. I did all the sound design myself. One of the things is like it's often tempting when you're in the mix to like raise the level of a particular sound effect, but then that can sort of distort things, and it's better to keep it at the level that it's being recorded at or make it lower and make everything work around it. So if you have got, say, a voice layer, make all of your sound effects work around the level of that voice layer. But I did also have the privilege of being able to sit in a sound mix with a proper sound designer who then tweaked what I'd done, and he made it 5:1 surround and everything, and I got to play with lots of gadgets. Yeah.
Okay. Right, so I think I'll finish with a question about control in that case. It's interesting here we've got a range of control over the projects you're in, because you've got two people on the panel who are essentially actors, or have been actors. And Tortor here, who, is it fair to say you had absolute control over your project?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So, starting with Júlia, how do you cope with the change in the power dynamic, essentially, with the filmmaking situation?
I think it was interesting. It is a lot. It is quite difficult. But yeah, like I said, I think next time I'll maybe not have complete and utter control like that. I might find another person to direct it.
And have you found it easy to go back to a more regular acting job essentially afterwards?
Yeah, I think it's a lot easier because you just have to concentrate on your performance. You don't have to concentrate on every single detail. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then Júlia, do you feel like you'd like more control if you do a future project?
Actually, this was my first time being completely just an actor.
Yeah.
I've done production before.
Yeah.
So this was really nice for me to actually just be like, I don't have to worry about the lighting, I don't have to worry about anything, I'm just
okay, so you're happy to let go?
Yeah, actually, it was very enjoyable. I mean, I would like to have a little bit more control, I guess, in future projects, just because it's really fun. I think creative, just putting my input in creatively. But it was really nice for this one to just kind of let Christina, our director, do her thing and run with her vision.
Okay. Thank you. And Tortor, so would you have liked to have less control?
Yes. So having complete control, you might think that's a good thing, but every decision you have to make, and it all falls then on you, and if anything goes wrong or it is a bad decision, you've made that decision. So it's quite a lot of pressure that you put on yourself when you are making all the decisions. And I hired a voice actor, so I really wanted a named actor on my film, so I reached out to agents, managed to get Nicola Walker, who's a British TV actor. And then I had to direct her remotely on the performance, and I'd write the script as well, and there was nobody checking what I was doing, so if it was not making sense, then that was my fault, and it's quite stressful.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you to our panel.